In this video, I'm going to show you how I put these drawer bottoms in these drawers that I'm making, and show you how I sort of fix my little mistake that I made too. Okay, so when we're installing drawer bottoms, there are a couple options. You can just take the bottom and just nail it directly to the bottom of the drawer. And the only problem with that is that it doesn't add the support that you really want on the bottom, because the nails are going into the wood this direction. All of the force in the drawer is hitting the bottom from this direction, has a tendency to pull those nails out. Now, the other way that you can do is you can add a little bit more glue surface to it by rabbiting the bottom of the drawer. So you can just put a rabbet groove all around the bottom of the drawer there, and then insert the drawer into there, and then you maximize the depth of your drawer with your bottom, and you have a little bit more glue surface to prevent it from breaking out even though the pressure is put on. But I like to lock my bottoms in on the drawers, and to do that I put a groove all the way around, and this groove holds this piece of plywood in here, or the piece of wood, whatever your bottom may be made of. I generally tend to not glue them in completely. I just sort of leave them so that they're held in place by the actual groove itself. Now, when you're making these grooves in these drawers, if you go on a through groove, which basically means that you just cut the groove from one end to the other, you're going to have spots where that groove is going to show up, and you see that that happens right there. Now, the other way that you can do it, or the other method you can do it, is you can do a stop groove, which you start the groove at the point here and you continue it down to the bottom of the drawer, but you don't go all the way out to the edge. And then so that way when you glue it together, you don't see any of these openings. Now, that's a little bit harder to do, a little bit more complicated. So I don't bother with that, I just make the through grooves. But what I do is I make it so that I place my groove so that the opening, or these open spots of the groove, will show up at the back, the front and back of the drawer. Now, you can fill these in afterwards. You can cut a little piece of wood and put them in there and fill it in if you're really worried about it. But because this is at the back of my drawer and at the front, where I'm going to have a false front on the drawer, nobody's ever going to see it, so I'm not going to worry about that. So it's just one less step I have to do. So let me show you how I put these drawer bottoms in. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to put in this bottom groove on the drawer, and I'm going to do that with my router bit here. And this is slightly under 1/4 inch. It's the actual router bits that are made for the plywood, same thickness of plywood, so it's a 32nd underneath, I think. But the idea is I'm going to have a little gap hole showing here, and I want that to be on my front panel, which is H. I want that to come out on my front and on my back, and I don't want it to show up on the sides, like, see, it doesn't show up here. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to put this gap in one of my cutouts here on the front piece. And if I had it here, then this would show. If I put it here, that would show on the sides there. But by putting my 1/4 inch groove right here in between these fingers here, the finger of the other one will cover that up. So the way that I set this up is I used my metal spacer, and I used a 1/4 inch spacer here to space the height. And I put it so that the blade is just a little bit above that. So that way, when I measure the distance here and I cut out my pieces, I can cut them out a 1/2 inch wider than what I need them. In other words, I'd measure the inside of one drawer to the other, and I could just make it a 1/2 inch wider because there's a 1/4 inch on each side. And by making this groove just slightly smaller or slightly longer or deeper than a 1/4 inch, it gives me enough room to slide that piece in there. So we're only talking about a 64th of a second, 32nd, not much taller. So the way that I set the distance from the fence to there is I take my front piece, this is the A piece right here, and I make sure that the top is going to the outside because I want my groove on the bottom of the drawer, obviously. And I'm going to line it up so that this bit cuts just inside this first finger right here down at the bottom. And by that bit cutting just inside that first finger, it's going to allow it to only show on the outside or on the side, only show in the front and back by doing that. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hide it on the front, on the sides, and make sure that it shows up only on the front and back. So now I will proceed to do what I need to do here. Okay, so now I have my grooves cut for my bottom piece on my drawers, and if you remember on the router table, I put the bit up a little bit above a 1/4 inch, like a 32nd above a 1/4 inch. So if I just add a 1/4 inch to each side of my measurement here, or basically a 1/2 inch on my bottoms, that's still going to give me enough room to slide them in. Whereas if I made it exactly a 1/4 inch, that might be a little bit tight and I might want to take it down a little bit. So take a measurement here. I'm going to measure this one first, and let me just get on here. And what I'm doing is I'm measuring the inside of my joints here. So the fingers that extend out, I'm just measuring the inside grooves there, or the dados on the finger joints. So this is 20 3/8. So 20 3/8 is for my front and back here, and this one is my sides. Yep, these are my sides. So I'll measure this one here, and I get 20 7/8. So 20 7/8. So like I said, I have a 1/4 inch on each side, which is a 1/2 inch, and a 1/2 inch is equal to 4/8. So I basically add 4/8 to it. So if I add 4/8 to 20 3/8, I get 20 7/8. If I add 4/8 to 20 7/8, which is my side ones, I end up with 20 11/8. And so I basically subtract 8 from 11, which gives me 3, so that gives me 3/8. And I add the 1 to 20. So I end up with a 21 3/8 and 20 7/8. So now I know these are the exact cuts that I need to make on the bottom. Now I can fudge it a little bit. I'll probably go in maybe a 32nd or something just to give me a little extra wiggle room on both the sides and the back there. But by having that little bit extra above a 1/4 inch on my router bit, that gives me enough playroom where if I made those the exact size, everything would fit. And that's what I'm going to try to do right now, just to prove to you that my theory does work. So off to the table saw and cutting out my panels, or my bottom panels. Okay, so now I'm going to check and see how all this fits. Now I always put my drawers together first, just to make sure that everything is working correctly and that all of my measurements are somewhat correct. This looks like that is too long. Well, better to have it too long than too short, that's for sure. So let me see where my mistake was. Oh, I bet you I put 21 7/8 instead of 21 3/8. But let's check and see. I did 21 7/8 instead of 21 3/8, because it's 20 7/8 this direction. Yep, and I just added so I have to cut this to the proper size of 21 3/8. So again, easy to make mistakes. I should have brought that over to my saw and double checked it, but I did not. So I'll go back and trim this down. Fortunately, I made the mistake longer than shorter, way better. So I will trim this down and be right back. All right, so I'm back. I have it cut properly, I believe. I guess if I was a good film editor, I'd edit that part out, but I do want to show you my mistakes. I mean, I do make them along the way, as we all do. That's why we buy a little bit extra wood whenever we figure out our projects, not only to make it for the waste wood, but also the wasted errors in design. So now this looks about correct. And we'll just hit this together. And let me make this. All right. So that gives me a nice solid joint. Now it's not all together completely yet. I'm going to actually put some band clamps and some edges around there and get this all set up. Then I'll come back and show you. And once I know that this all sets up so that everything is solid, then I will take it all apart, add the glue, put it all back together. It's always good to put something together first to try it all out, make sure everything works, rather than putting glue on it, trusting and doing that. So like everything else we do in woodworking, you know, measure twice, cut once. Well, also assemble a couple times and then put it together with glue once you're ready. So I'll bring you back once I have my band clamps around everything. Okay, so the big advantage about putting this all together here is to test it out, make sure that everything fits well before you apply the glue, and it does. And I'm using these cauls, these 1/2-inch box joint cauls I purchased, and actually these were made, designed quite intelligently. Yeah, that's the word I want. They actually work quite well, and especially on finger joints where you want them to be a little proud. Using these type of things that come with my Bessey clamps here, which work really good on like, you know, if you have a dovetail, dovetails a little bit. Yeah, dovetails will work out if you don't have it extended out too much. If you have a miter joint or any other type of joint where you're gluing together. But when you have these box joints, you want all these fingers to protrude a little bit so you can sand them down after the fact. And these actually work quite well, and somebody was smart on the design on it. So this is not a video about those, so I will talk later on about, do a video separately on these cauls and these Bessey clamps. But right now my drawer is all glued up, or not glued up, it's all put together, ready to be glued up. I generally leave my bottoms loose. I put maybe a little bit of glue on there. You have to worry about expansion if it's a solid bottom, but because it's plywood, it's not as big of a worry. But in high humidity places, you still do get some expansion and contraction with even plywood. It's a very stable wood, but you do get a little bit. So I'll take this all apart now, sand all of my inside, do any round over that I want to do. Probably most likely do that after the fact, especially on the finger joints. But I do want to sand all the inside pieces first before I glue this together, just to make sure that that's really finished. It's kind of hard to get in there afterwards with a sanding block and take care of it. But if you got most of it sanded, maybe little parts, much easier to do. So I'm going to pre-sand at least all the inside stuff, not the outside so much, but all the inside. Go ahead and glue this all together and my drawers will be done. So that's how you put together drawers with finger joints, finger box joints. And if you like this video, please do subscribe. I'm doing a lot of woodworking over the next few months, so I will have a number of videos coming out of different subjects and different types of cabinets and things that I'm doing on it. Love to have you along, and I want to thank you for watching this video now. Please do give a like if you do enjoy this, and if you're going to give me a thumbs down, let me know what I did wrong, please. I would like to know, because I really do want to make videos that are appealing to people out there, but most of my videos are just the stuff that I'm doing in my shop. Thanks for joining.